Hi, this is Josh. Josh is going to tell for us today his thoughts about the new realities and within the juicy life, and juicy means joyful, unapologetic, inspiring, creatively successful and young. Josh, please tell a bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Josh Lawler. I'm a partner at the law firm Lawler, and I am writing a book, hopefully to be out December 2023, called Surviving the Migration, about blockchain and non-fungible tokens and the paradigm shift that every person is going to experience because of this new technology and how to survive the migration.
So tell us a little bit more like what's happening in the world. What is this migration about, and in which sector is this migration, and what are we going to do about it?
Sure. So it's in every sector. If you
What are we migrating from to?
From to what?
Yeah.
We're migrating from and to. We're migrating from a Web 2 paper-based commerce to a Web 3 NFT-based commerce. And notably, that allows for a lot of different types of commerce between people who otherwise would not have been able to transact together, and assets that could not previously have existed. We can unlock a lot of liquidity in assets that didn't previously exist, and we can do some things that are really nothing short of magical. But as usual, the law can't keep up with technology, so there's also a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things for the typical person, particularly a typical entrepreneur, to look out for and to be aware of before they step into kind of a trap for the unwary.
So tell us more, what is financial freedom? How would this migration add to financial freedom of each of, citizens of the United States or in the world?
Sure. Well, it's really difficult to say, and it's a very complicated question, and that is something I get into in the book. On the one hand, the idea that your assets are all represented digitally by a non-fungible token allows you to move them in ways and carry them with you in ways and do things with them that you could not do when they were represented as pieces of paper evidencing your ownership. And at the same time, it opens up all kinds of avenues for violation of law or violation of policy that the law is there to protect but doesn't quite work to protect. And that becomes kind of evident as we kind of talk about a little bit of what we're doing. But the governments of the world are correctly very concerned about their ability to maintain order and kind of their sovereign state and collect taxes appropriately and prevent money laundering appropriately and protect their citizens appropriately. Those are all valid concerns that the current technology paradigm shift has thrown up in the air, and they're really all grappling with what to do with it. As our regular people are grappling with what to do with it, but there's some amazing opportunities because a lot of the existing kind of power structures and logistical structures are shaken. A lot of middlemen are cut out of the way. A lot of things are possible for a typical person to do that they couldn't do before.
So tell us about this vision of the new world that you see. What was before and what will be after this migration that you're talking about?
Sure.
In very brief
right.
terms.
Tell us about the Great Migration in very brief terms. So the easiest way to think about it is, if you're familiar with the printing press and, the use case explosion of pieces of paper and what they were good for. Before the printing press, we had paper and books were a thing, but they had to be written by hand. So not too many copies of them and not available to most people. If you were there the day the printing press was invented, and you could look into the future and see the use case explosion that we were about to have for pieces of paper with movable type, and how much that was going to affect every man, woman, and child on the planet and drive forward so much advancement, and good and bad, that would be an amazing thing. Right now, with what's happening with non-fungible tokens and NFTs and the different things that we can do with those, that dwarfs the printing press in terms of the significance. And in terms of describing what we're going to be looking at, it's impossible to describe. Nobody can possibly understand the myriad of different use cases that are going to come up and which ones are going to be prevalent, and which ones will be, the proverbial killer app, which some will, and which ones will be totally useless, which we might think might be great, but they end up not being that big of a deal at all. But the short version of it is that we can digitally represent assets, and we can move them very quickly through high velocity, and we can automate transactions so that we have a lot less need for trusted intermediaries and a lot less need for third parties within logistics and brokers and dealers and escrow agents and things of that nature. We can do things like making your airline ticket a non-fungible token, so that if you need to change your flight, instead of needing to call the airline and deal with whatever they are going to give you, which can sometimes be dissatisfactory, we can put that into a market dynamic and have an exchange where you can buy and sell your NFT that represents your airline ticket.
So are you basically removing the middleman?
A lot of it is removing middlemen. There's a lot of removing middlemen, but there's also creating entirely new types of assets.
Like what?
So a non-fungible token.
What is it?
So a non-fungible token is basically a snippet of software execution that comes off of a smart contract that's loaded onto a blockchain. And just to break that all down, because I know not everybody knows what all those things are.
Not many people know what is a smart contract.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We have to get to blockchain first.
Let's do that little journey, but very fast.
We have to do it. I know, we have to. You can't not do it. So, without going into the technology, that's not important. Right. What a distributed ledger, which a blockchain is a distributed ledger, is it's a way for a single ledger to be held by thousands of people at once, so that you don't have to trust that somebody got the count right, because there's thousands of people with the exact same count who will all validate the transaction. And that paradigm switch is massive. It goes from the government's the only one with the count, or the company is the only one with the count, or whatever it is, to being everybody's got the count, everybody's got the information. One of the things that you can put on a blockchain is a smart contract. And a smart contract is something like a vending machine. It's not actually a contract. That's important to understand. It's more like a vending machine. And like a vending machine, if you put in your dollar, you hit the right button, you get the piece of candy or the soda that you're looking for. You don't have a contract with the vending machine. The vending machine is just an execution methodology, and you trust it because we know that vending machines work and we're used to how they work, so that's okay. A smart contract is the same kind of thing. You don't have a contract with a smart contract, but you can see it and you can audit it, and they're under certain standards, so we know it's going to work, so that if you put in the input, which might be spending a digital asset, or it might be pushing a button or showing up in an event or any number of other things, you can count on that smart contract as a vending machine to kick out an output, which is usually a non-fungible token, which is going to have the value of what it is that you thought you were getting. And that non-fungible token, in turn, that is representative of something else. The non-fungible token itself is nothing. It's like a piece of paper. But the something else, that could be a JPEG, that could be a piece of title to real property, that could be a contractual right. So you might have something where you get a mortgage on a house, and there's a mortgage someplace, and the borrower gets an NFT representing their rights and obligations, and the lender gets an NFT representing their rights and obligations.
Yeah, so how does the NFT contribute to financial freedom of this migration that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. So primarily by letting parties that couldn't previously contract with each other freely contract with each other, because it just cuts away a lot of the logistical issues. And obviously that also takes third-party applications. I mean, somebody has to build the marketplaces. People have to understand how to use the marketplaces. And notably, and one of the things that we're working on, somebody has to provide information about the assets represented by the NFTs, so that all parties know that they're dealing with the same NFT, so that you can in fact have trust. Same
so
asset.
Are you saying that NFT is a new way of making business, making
Absolutely.
transactions?
Yes.
And this is the migration are you talking about?
It is. And it's going to take place everywhere. It's going to be everything from, your kid's transcript in high school will start being recorded as information accessible via NFT, through your mortgage, and any kind of lease obligation can be NFT oriented. There's a tribalism of, I own a Grateful Giraffe NFT, which is a JPEG that's stored, out in, I believe it's an interplanetary file system, or IPFS. But that also entitles me to go to certain events that the Grateful Giraffes put on. And there are a lot of different memberships groups going that way. So your country clubs will all have NFTs that will evidence like your equity membership.
But does this NFT clubs creating kind of like memberships of elite society that only very highly technologically advanced people have access to, or do they anyhow separate, socially one type of people from other type of people?
So the NFTs don't do anything because they're just technology.
Or the ownership of those.
Right, and that's no different than it currently is. No better, no worse. I will say that very much like we have reading and writing right now, and like if you're illiterate, that kind of cuts you out of a lot of society. Having some level of education on how non-fungible tokens work is going to be necessary for anybody who wants to participate in society, and that should become something that we teach as a fundamental in basic schooling.
So what would be the first steps in order to get that education for the normal average consumer?
Well, the selfish answer would be to say reading my book, but
Right.
since it's
But
not out yet,
you're still in the process of the book.
so I'm still writing. Since I'm still writing that, thankfully, it's not hard to find information.
Where do people start? Because it's like an ocean of blockchain and
Yeah, it's an ocean of blockchain and everything. Honestly, the best way to start is to have a little bit of money, and I mean a little bit of money, like, $50, whatever, and to just go and buy something in a marketplace. Make yourself go through the process of getting a digital wallet and like learning how to understand how to have digital ownership of things through a wallet using a public and private key set, and then to buy something cheap. It doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a buy. It could be a giveaway.
How much was your
My Grateful Giraffe?
giraffe NFT?
Yeah, my giraffe, I think I paid about $120 for my giraffe at the time.
But this $120 investment into Grateful Giraffe gave you access to different communities.
Yes. Yeah,
And
it's
they are
a
good
membership.
for what?
The Grateful Giraffe community, shout out, is a global organization started in Israel. Definitely a very big concentration in Southern California, but other places also. And it's a group that is unified in practicing gratitude. So there are, all kinds of events, and there are message boards and things of that nature.
It's basically a social movement.
After a fashion. I don't know that I'd call it a movement because we're not heavy on recruiting or anything like that. But it's just, it's like a Friars Club or a Moose Lodge or anything else that's been around forever. It's a social group, certainly. But this one's centered around, gratitude.
Right. So how could you explain actually this incredible paradigm in the society that we go so much deeper into technology, and in the other hand, we create all those communities? How do those two developments are correlating with each other?
Well, the technology is a bigger backdrop. The communities, that's a human thing. That's tribalism, and that's been around for ages. And this is just kind of a more efficient way of kind of administering, I guess, the group, and giving something else for everybody to kind of bond together over. But the technology, the point of the technology is that these NFTs, they can do a lot of different things. I mean, they can be proof of ownership. They can provide access. They can provide access to a group or something online. They can also provide access physically. I mean, your house key will be an NFT in your smartphone. You will be able to raise your garage by having, the NFT in your wallet activate a near field communicator, like a garage door opener, to open the garage door. So very literal in that sense.
But doesn't that mean that all those technological devices are facilitated through your phone access, that once you're out of the power, you have no access to anything?
You always have to build in fail safes, and that's nothing new. I mean, even my current electronic garage door has a red chain on it in case the power goes out, so I can pull it and open the door. That's typical design work that you need to always make sure that you're safe in the event that something goes wrong. That's reasonably foreseeable, because things do always go wrong. We don't plan for everything. It's not possible.
So So describing your vision of the society, how we're going to be dealing with money, how we're going to be dealing with technology. So paint for me a picture for 100 plus years.
Oh, small question. Okay.
So a person wakes up in the bed, they grab their phone, or they talk to
at that point, for 100 years,
navigation system or whatever.
So within 100 years, your phone's going to be an implant. So you're not going to have to pick up anything or talk to anything. It'll be
so
just.
we'll have a chip.
We'll think about it. You will think about your array of things that you are going to do that day, and your catalog of assets that you have, which might all be represented by NFTs, and that might be you have a jet ski, and you've got a skateboard, and you've got tickets to a museum, and you've got some time in a recording studio, and those are all things that you've got, and those are NFTs that allow access or a certain amount of use.
Instead of apps in our iPhones, right?
It coordinates, and I'm not an Apple person, so I'm not going to go with iPhone, but you're not going to replace the app. The NFT is a key, and it's proof access and execution basically, but it's not the app itself. So the app works with it. So if you're on Fortnite or something like that, Fortnite's not going away, but some of the in-game assets may be represented as NFTs, and you may be able, unlike the current situation, you may be able to buy and sell those in-game assets with other players, which you can't currently do. That's one of the things in GameFi that is really interesting, is that for the first time, like, the game assets will be able to have market value outside of games. But getting back to your question, you wake up and you've got whatever it is that you might want to do, and you probably have some virtual assistant that's kind of measuring your biorhythms and your vital signs and saying, hey, today's a good day to go kite surfing, and like pointing you in the direction of your NFT that shows that you've got however many uses of a rented kiteboard gear that you might go to. I mean, there's, like I said, it's impossible to really envision all of the different use cases because it's going to be so ridiculously prevalent.
So what's your best advice for people to get into this migration, and how to become successful, independent, and financially self-reliant?
Get literate. And I hadn't thought about that till this interview, so thank you for that. But it really is get literate. Get information and start practicing. And it's fun. It's not horrible stuff, and can be a little frustrating at first when things don't work the way you want them to, but that's kind of the point of getting literate.
So what are you looking forward in your future for something that'd be joyful, that would fulfill your life fully, in technology-wise?
I have my eye on fixing a lot of larger systemic problems with government and society. Kind of bigger reform type thing is to notably focus on the problem that law can't keep up with technology, and there's other ways of doing things. And it's big change, so we're talking 30 to 40 to 50 year time frames, but that's kind of the path that I'm on.
What will you unapologetically doing in order to reach that goal that you're talking about?
Well, the first thing is hearts and minds. So this type of interview, educating people is first, and then also building technology so that the systems exist to foster the change that I'd like to see.
What would be that change? One sentence.
Self-sovereignty.
Self-sovereignty. Okay. What would you like to our audience to hear about the inspiring thing that you would like to pass on?
Well,
what this Burning Man inspired you about?
What has Burning Man inspired me about?
Yeah, what would you like to pass on to all the other people?
It's kind of a non sequitur. So this Burning Man for me has been really about being conscious of how I see the world, and the filters that I look through, and making sure that I'm looking through filters that are fair to other other people as well as to myself, because that ends up being better for me as well, because the rising tide does lift all boats, and you don't find things that you're not allowing yourself to look for.
How do you think are the best way for creatives to become successful? From your observation as technology lawyer, what do you see their pitfalls? What are they not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous thing. So, I mean, I can say the same thing that everybody's been saying for 30 or 40 or 50 years, which is follow your passion. And I think that that's a necessary but not a sufficient. I think if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're almost certainly doomed to failure. Just because you are passionate about what you're doing does not mean you're going to be successful automatically.
Right.
I would say, it's also important to recognize that the things that you're not good at actually probably still are important, even though you're not good at them, and to find ways to bring others into your life and into your work that can balance out the places where you're not by yourself as strong. That's a big thing. And then, the other one is just golden rule: treat people well. It's almost always going to end up in disaster if you don't treat people well.
What's yummy in your life currently, or what you're looking to create yummingly in your life?
Well, I have my 2 kids, of course. So I have not seen them now for a week because I've been at Burning Man, and I am just jonesing to get back to them. They're 6 and 9 years old, so they're great ages, and we just moved into a new house, so we're having a good time with that. And I do want to get the book finished. That's pretty key. And I will
What's the release date?
I don't have a release date yet, but I'm hoping before the end of the year.
Great.
I've been at it a while.
So remind us again who you were and what you're looking for.
Sure. I am Josh Lawler. I am a partner at the law firm Zuber Lawler.
Where?
In Los Angeles, but we are a national firm, and we do a lot of work internationally. And I am writing the book Surviving the Migration, and working with a company called Mantis AI, which is fostering Web3 commerce through NFTs.
That's very cool. Oh, tell us more about the fishbowl talks. What were they about, and what was the most exciting for you about those talks?
Well, all right. So I did a whole day at once, so there were many fishbowl talks.
All right. Give me top 5 wisdoms or ideas that you learned in fishbowls, listening to all the other speakers.
Oh gosh. All right, that's hard.
Number 1.
Number 1.
Number 5. Let's start with number 5.
So I have to reverse order them at the same time off the top of my head. Okay. Use blockchain just for that. Number 5 is just understanding the history of where we are in kind of the technology paradigm, and that we're at a place where law doesn't keep up with technology, and that all of the things that we are observing in the world right now, we have to recognize what the policy underneath the law is and kind of all try to toe the line in terms of doing the right thing, even if it's not necessarily illegal to do the wrong thing. That's a big deal, so I'm going to put that one up there.
Ooh, legal, illegal, and doing the right thing. How do those terms can coexist together? How can we do legally the right thing?
Now we're going to get into a whole lot of fishbowl talk, so this could be a long blog post. But to give you an example that's like current, I do a lot of work in securities law and blockchain, and there are many things going on where the securities law would make something illegal if the token involved is a security. And if the token is not a security, then the thing is not illegal in terms of it's not breaking a statute. But it doesn't mean somebody didn't do something morally wrong. And that's why the courts are having so much trouble and why the SEC is being such a pain in the butt, because the law right now does not fit very well the universe of things you can do that are wrong. You can do things that are wrong that are not illegal. And then when that goes to court, the court has to look at the law and go, well, okay, that may or may not have been right, but it wasn't illegal, and so we're dismissing and go to Congress and get things to be changed. Congress, of course, can't do that very quickly or easily, and sometimes very correctly, so that's its own problem. But
all right, number 4.
Number 4. would be that we still have a long way to go on educating even people in the space as to
Educated on what?
Well, I'm getting to that. As to the interplay between, how the law works and how the technology works. There's a developer maxim that says code is law, and that's completely and totally not the case. Code is instruction, and code might be what happens if you're coding correctly. You might instruct something properly, but that does not make it legal by any stretch. That lack of understanding needs to be bridged.
Number three.
Number three, I would think, is that in order for technology to progress, we need to pay attention to the existing sovereign government interests and recognize that it's not going to work to create paradigms where the government does not have a way to enforce its goals. So if you create a paradigm in decentralized finance where people can trade assets with each other and there's no broker-dealer and there's no exchange, so therefore there's no regulation because usually it's the broker-dealer and the exchange that are regulated, and there's no know your customer rules because there's nobody who's a regulated endpoint, so suddenly it's like very easy to money launder and scam. That's going to be a problem, and the regular governments, whether they do it legally or under ostensible legal means, but not really, they're going to come down on it. There's no way around that. It's not a good move to try to evade those types of interests, and anti-terrorism, money laundering, those are the biggest ones, of course.
Number two. The most yummy one before the last one.
the second to most yummy.
What stayed like the most in your head that would you oh my god, that's so cool? What haven't you heard last year? What today you heard and you was like, that's cool.
That's cool, yeah. Trying to think where that is. I guess I look towards political system change and the different models that are kind of coming out towards that. Things around voting, and of course, we've had a lot of problems in the United States recently with votes and, accusations by certain people that votes have been miscounted or manipulated and those types of things. And, the blockchain technology holds the promise to really answer those types of questions once and for all, if the right technology is put in place and we can see what the right technology is. So that's really super exciting to me because I think we're in a really bad place right now, and it would be great to be out of that bad place.
And the last one.
The yummiest thing.
The yummiest for all of the fish bowls.
The yummiest for all of the fish bowls. Yummiest of the fish bowls. The yummiest fish bowl thing would probably be my new exposure to the Juicy blog, which of course has got all kinds of wonderful juicy types of elements to it, not the least of which is the lovely host who is holding the camera and at some point may flip that around on herself.
Thank you so much. So your last message to your audience, what would you like to say?
Stay juicy.
Thank you.